6 o'clock.
Okay, well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Planning Advisory Committee for February 7th, 2023. It's actually our first official Planning Advisory Committee for this term of council. So we will open the meeting. I will look for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Mary, seconded by Eric, that the Planning Advisory Committee meeting be opened at 7 p.m. 6 p.m. Thank you. All in favor? It's carried. And adoptions of the minutes from the regular meeting January 7th. So look for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Cam, seconded by Mary. That the minutes of the Planning Advisory Committee meeting held January 17th, 2023 be adopted as circulated. All in favor? It's carried. Sorry, I'll stop.
That's okay.
Did I need to sign somewhere else in the back?
Oh, yeah,
Sorry.
the minutes.
Thank you. Is there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. Presentations from the public. We have none this evening. Number 5, consent applications. Dealing with the B1 2023 for Mr. Harrell. So I'll look for a mover and a seconder to table this motion. Moved by Mary, seconded by Cam. That the Planning Advisory Committee recommends to Council that the consent application B 2023 Dominic Perro for the creation of one new lot be deferred at the request of the North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority pending a site inspection. Any questions? All in favor? It's carried. B2 2023, the Bowman application. So I'll look for a mover and a seconder to put this on the table for consideration. Moved by Cam, seconded by Eric. That the Planning Advisory Committee recommends to Council that consent application B2 2023 Bowman, Heidi and Neil for a lot addition be approved with the following conditions.
Do we want to let Richard speak?
Absolutely.
Okay, before we go through that part.
You have to read all.
Once, yes, you will.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry,
with-
Richard, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah,
Thank you.
with the property my wife and I purchased, when we looked at the property offered by the Bowmans, we decided to purchase that smaller piece, the 34 acres in addition to the 116. We thought that it made sense to have that piece added to it. It'd give us a larger piece of farmland to use. And we're looking at doing some beekeeping on the property, a little bit of maple syrup. We know some of the trees were tapped, and a little bit of a hobby farm. So my wife's background is from Novar area. So her family did some maple syrup back in the day. So we're looking at doing some of that as well.
That's great. Any questions for the presenter? So again, moved by Cam, second by Eric, that the Planning Advisory Committee recommends to Council that the consent application B2 2023 Bowman, Heidi and Neil for a lot addition be approved with the following conditions. 1, that this approval applies to the transfer as applied for, which shows a lot addition from concession 6, lot 29 and lot 30, Township of Bonfield, to concession 6, lot 28 and 29, RP 36R14800 parts 1 and 2, Township of Bonfield. 2, the following documents be provided. A, the original executed transfer deed, a duplicate original, and 1 photocopy for our records. B, a copy of the survey plan deposited in the land titles office if required. C, an electronic copy of the survey emailed to planning@bonfieldtownship.com if required. D, a schedule describing the severed parcel attached to the transfer for approval purposes. 3, that the building setbacks for all buildings must meet the requirements of the zoning bylaw for the retained and or severed lots, whichever are affected at the time of the survey, if survey is required. 4, under section 53, subsection 45 of the Planning Act, the applicant is required to obtain a certificate of cancellation in relation to the previous severance of the subject property. The original executed certificate, a duplicate original, and one photocopy for our records must be supplied along with a schedule describing the parcel to be attached to the certificate for approval purposes. 5, pursuant to section 50, subsection 45 of the Planning Act, a cancellation certificate must be issued in order to allow the lots to merge, and subsection 3 and 5 shall apply to any subsequent conveyance and transaction. This will be indicated on the certificate upon endorsement by the Township of Bonfield. Note, as indicated with an X, a certificate of approval as required under the Ontario Regulation 33212 of the Ontario Building Code Act for a sewage disposal system must be obtained prior to the development of the property. A development interference with wetlands and altercation to shorelines and watercourses permit may be required from the North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority prior to undertaking any development of the property. It is recommended that prior to development, the property owner consult with the MNRF regarding potential requirements under the Endangered Species Act. An entrance permit may be required from the Township of Bonfield Public Works Department prior to the development of the property. Because this consent is also for a lot addition pursuant to section 50, subsection 12 of the Planning Act, subsection 3 and 5 shall apply to any subsequent conveyance or transaction with respect to the lot additions. This will be indicated on the transfer deed upon endorsement by the Township of Bonfield. Any questions? All in favor? That's carried.
Can I ask a general question about that, Sabrina? On the section 50 for the lot addition, do they have the same amount of time to have it consent stamped and registered as a full consent?
Yes, 2 years
Okay.
from the date of decision.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Richard.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Okay,
Okay, moving on to number 6, road closure applications. Do we have any? Number 7, application to license a shore road allowance or an encroachment agreement. Nothing. Number 8, zone change applications, which is information only.
Nope.
Number 9, referrals from council. There are none.
Nope.
10, other business. Bill 23, More Homes Built Faster Act 2022. I believe, Sabrina, you're going to speak to this.
Yep. The Conservation Authority has had a few meetings with municipalities to talk about the changes that have happened specifically under this bill with their legislation. It affects our planning committee because the Conservation Authority used to perform reviews for us under part of the provincial policy statements. They are no longer allowed to do that for us. We aren't allowed to enter into an agreement to pay them for that service to perform that review. However, we are still required to perform that review and ensure that we are following policy. So at this point, I know a lot of municipalities, planning authorities are kind of left in the dark to figure out how we get this review performed while still processing our applications under our required timelines with the Planning Act. So I think it's important and required that we start canvassing some options to get this review performed for us, as it's still required. So, and there are some other changes, important changes under Bill 23. Some haven't come into effect yet. Some have, however, they don't apply to us right now. So right now, the biggest thing is the Conservation Authority, the review that they can't provide anymore.
Okay, thanks, Sabrina. Any questions of Sabrina at this point? I believe we have a motion to request the manager to, I'll read it. I'll look for a mover and a seconder for this motion. I'll read it. That the Planning Advisory Committee recommends to council to direct the manager of planning and development to canvass interim solutions to undertake the required review of planning applications that has been affected by the legislative changes in Bill 23, More Homes Built Faster Act 2022, and to report back to the Planning Advisory Committee and council with recommendations. And whereas, in accordance with the Bonfields official plan, the applicant is responsible for providing the minimum distance separation setback calculations when applicable for planning applications. The Planning Advisory Committee also recommends to council to acknowledge that the applicants moving forward be fully responsible for providing the required minimum distance separation setback calculations when applicable on planning applications. So that's what we're tabling. I'll need a mover and a seconder if we'd like to entertain that. Moved by Eric, seconded by Mary. And sorry, do you?
Sorry, I just had a few more comments that reminded me.
Yeah.
So the MDS calculation, that was something that the Conservation Authority used to do for us. We would gather the data from the applicant and then send it to them. They would perform the actual calculations required for setbacks, and then we would just be responsible for enforcing them. So right now, because it's in our official plan that it's a policy that the applicant provided, I think it's best that we go to our official plan and have the applicants provide that until, I don't know, maybe there's another solution we can come up with in the future that we could go back to doing that review, but they are required to provide it to us. And then just another comment about, so canvassing solutions. We've never had a consulting firm or a planner on staff here. And in looking for review options because of these changes now, it may be beneficial in the future that this interim solution become a permanent solution that we could utilize for other review purposes, maybe for the committee. So it's more than just this. At the time, this is what's most important, but I think for future, it would be beneficial.
Perfect. Any questions for that? I just, sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
so it's gonna cost us more, the applicant more, and are we gonna still pay the Conservation Authority the same rate? Or it's gonna go
So
down?
the service agreement that we have with the Conservation Authority right now, we pay them 25% of our application fees to perform the review they do. I do believe all those review contracts have to be finalized by the end of this year. I don't believe they're looking at decreasing their fees. They've also been put in a freeze lock. They're not allowed to increase their fees for a year, and they have operating costs as well. So that, yes, we still have to pay our fee for that, even though we're not getting that review portion. In terms of offsetting the costs, I think that'll come when some solutions are looked at and assessed, and to see where everything sits. That'll be part of my next report to council and the committee to see where what it's going to cost and whatnot. But again, it is a required review that we have to perform. And unfortunately, we're not allowed to use the services that we have been using for several years.
Any other questions? I just have one. So if an applicant comes to the township and is looking and is needing to actually supply the minimum distance setback or separation, that's fair, but the typical applicant probably won't know where to start seeking those services. Is there a way that we can support applicants in steering them in a direction to?
Yeah, so typically we like that applicants come in for a pre-consultation meeting, where at that meeting it would be identified if they're within the distance to livestock, digester, manure storage, whatnot. Then it would be brought to their attention that you may need an MDS. And then, yes, we could not direct them, but suggest. There's lots of like planners perform MDS setback calculations. The Conservation Authority, even though I don't know if someone can go to them, municipalities can't. So there's lots of options that we could suggest.
Can
just
we
for
work that?
guidance.
Sorry, can we work that into the fees for the severance applications?
Like that we take on the responsibility, like we have someone like, to perform that calculation on applications for us.
And then we pay it, but we charge it in it goes in our fees when we,
As part of our application fee.
yeah.
That could be a discussion.
Yeah, I like that idea only for the fact that it simplifies it for the applicant. And we could also seek out partnerships with other municipalities that have a planner that could perform this, and, you know, it would just allow us to streamline, like, I think what I'm trying to figure out is how do we keep this as streamlined as possible while respecting the fact that applicants have a due diligence to provide the information required, but anything we can
Yeah.
do to try and streamline that, absolutely.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Okay. Well, we
And
can,
That'll,
Sorry.
yeah, like that'll be all part of starting to review what options are out there for us, what resources we have access to, what we can take on, while still being fair and ensuring we're doing our proper review.
okay, so you'll bring this forward, and I know that we're passing that you're gonna bring a report back. Would that be part of this report, or might be kind of too soon to figure out how we could potentially support those applicants from a municipal standpoint?
Sorry, what do you mean?
So,
Like,
you're gonna be bringing us a report back for our review, right?
yeah, with some
Yeah.
options.
With some options,
Um,
but this section of those options won't necessarily be included in that, right? This is an additional piece of
The
information we're asking for?
the MDS part.
Yeah,
I mean, it could be included because that was something the Conservation Authority used to review for us that we don't have the ability to use them for anymore.
right, okay.
So that will be yes, it can be something, even though it isn't our official plan that the applicants provided, if that's something we want to look at.
Perhaps you can just include in your report some potential options for this committee to look at, and if so, council to look at, which could range from applicants have to find their own. We could provide a list of, open it up and say, here's a list of people that do it. That gets a little tricky. Or
Yeah.
as Neri was saying, we could potentially bill them for it and then offer that service through a partnership if we can find it. So if you can bring back even those
Mhm.
options for consideration, that'd be great.
I have a question regarding, so the Conservation Authority would do these reviews prior, but we're no longer going to be working with them to get the reviews, but do they still do the reviews independent of working with municipalities? So if I put it forward an application, do I go directly to the Conservation Authority and they would do that service for the applicant?
So they do still perform reviews on our applications. This bill has removed certain sections of that review that they're allowed to do. In terms of if an applicant is allowed to go and hire them for that service, I don't know. I'd have to find out if how that
okay.
works. I just know from a municipality standpoint, our relationship with them on our planning applications and their responsibilities under their act to provide.
So the 25% that they take financially from the application, they still perform other services, this one, and is there any other ones that they had cut off from providing us?
Under this, for our plan review, it's the sections that I mentioned in the report that they're no longer allowed to provide that have come into effect. There are other changes that haven't come into effect yet, but these are the ones that have.
And just out of curiosity,
Yeah.
why did they decide to not provide these services? Like what's the act trying to do here?
Well, it's trying to support more homes built faster. But I mean, then you're getting
But-
into the legislation on why the bill was passed, and
Yeah, but if they are still required to do it, then they won't provide the services. They may have actually slowed the
It's-
process.
it's not that the Conservation Authority doesn't want to provide the services. It was like it came down from legislative, like
Provincial.
it's not that the Conservation Authority has said we don't want to do this anymore, right? They were mandated that you cannot do it anymore.
Mhm.
So
But yet it's still a requirement.
yes,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the thing I'm not following. So if they want to if the act's intent is to build homes faster, but they're still mandated to do that.
we are still mandated to perform the review, but we've
Yeah.
been taken away. The one option that I think, well, every municipality that works with the Conservation Authority used, they provided that review to all of our neighboring municipalities. And all the municipalities have been left to find other ways of still performing the review because it's still required.
Mhm.
I see that it's like anything when they take the government assistance away from us, usually then consultants step up, do their own organizing, then you have the option of paying someone to do it, and that's probably what'll happen.
Mhm.
Cost more.
There has to be somebody that can provide us with answers because they have to give us some direction with it, and they can't just take it right away from us. But that's what it appears right now.
Yes,
And we're on our own until we find someone to give us the answers that we need.
yes.
So if that streamline option that you mentioned, you're gonna look for different areas where we can actually provide, or at least recommend to the applicant where they can get this review done?
So for the MDS, yes, for that, because again, it's in our official plan that applicants provide it. So right now, that's why I had recommended that we go back to our policy that they provide it to us, because there are lots of options and services for them to go and get that calculation done. The review part under the provincial policy statements that the Conservation Authority used to do as well, that like I don't know about putting that on the applicant. That I think is something that we should canvass options as part of our review process. And again, though, like, I mean, we can't absorb the entire cost for that because.
Yeah.
So like options have to be canvassed to see what is even out there, what pricing looks like. Yeah, and what our options are to get that review, because we are required to perform that review.
And hopefully it'll become more clear as more municipalities are sitting in the exact same boat we are. Somebody will come up with a formula that'll work for the
Yeah.
municipality and the
It's-
applicants, and
It's very new. Like
Yeah.
this just came into effect January 1st, and they just started tabling it and doing readings November of last year. So it all happened really fast, these changes.
and we are no longer able to, do we have any in the hopper now that are kind of waiting for the Conservation Authority that they can clean up? Did you mention that we have until the end of the year, or is it like now
It's in effect. It came into effect January 1st.
and there's no, okay, and do we have anything in the hopper right now that this will affect or slow down, given any applications in the,
Well, our consent applications, yes.
okay, so we'll have to do this with a bit of haste, I guess. Okay, any other questions? All in favor? That's carried. Let's see here, number 11, correspondence. So updated consent application form.
Did I? Oh yeah, there's no motion for that.
Are these on the website,
Yes,
the new ones? Oh,
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so your next two items are just for discussion. There's no motions for them.
Okay, did you want to speak to it?
Yep, so let me just get my I took a review of our current consent applications that we were using. And then I took a review under the Ontario regulations for what's required for prescribed information to be provided. And that's been updated since. So with reviewing that, I formulated a new consent form. All the information that's contained in there is prescribed information that the applicant is responsible for providing. And then I also formulated the first page kind of overall information, little checklist, and then a little section on what happens when a complete application is received. I think that's one of the most common questions. So the applicant can also refer to that. And then the checklist, again, for the applicant, when submitting an application, to make sure they've got all their information and have something to reference back to.
Great. And that's handed to them in their initial consultation meeting, or? Right.
Yep, and it is on our website under our application and forms. The consent application is there. Anyone can come into the office and request one as well.
Excellent.
So usually if someone walks in for a consent form, the clerks will prompt me and I'll come out and meet the person, and then, yeah.
Okay, no, that's great. Any questions on that?
I don't have any questions, but I just want to comment that this is a great idea. I could have used this when I put my consent forward. I had a little bit of a hiccup, but this is great.
That's great.
It is, I mean, your average person, there's so much information to be provided, and I hope that this kind of too helps more, is beneficial big time to the applicant as well, and knowing, the information they need to provide and gathering everything, so.
That's great. Okay, thank you. Moving on to official plan review update. Manager Green.
Okay, so we're in the process of reviewing and updating our official plan, which under the mandate of a planning advisory committee under the Planning Act is the planning committee's mandate to prepare and present an official plan. So there is a special meeting of council booked for next Wednesday, February 15th at 6 p.m. The consulting firm that we're working with, they're going to be doing a presentation to council to give a kind of overview of the process of this is what our timeline looks like. This is what's required. This is why we're doing it, whatnot. That meeting is also open for public consultation. So if any of the public has concerns, they register to be on the agenda, they'll be able to speak. We've advertised that meeting date. We started advertising just before Christmas for that meeting, so everyone was well aware of the meeting. That one, I think it'd be a good idea if the committee members either attend or you can watch on YouTube after, because all of our meetings are on YouTube. And then our March 7th meeting, JL Richards will be presenting to the committee a background report and review. So basically what's transpired since our last review and update, and their information, they'll present that to us, and that'll open the discussion at our committee level to start the review process to discuss what the committee would like to see changed or addressed in the official plan. Because as PAC, you guys, the committee is going to guide that process. So that'll be our March 7th meeting. And yeah.
So, and just to be clear, so the meeting next week, February 15th, is the initial point of engagement for the public, but not the only one. There will be other points of where the public will have input into this throughout the process, right?
Yes. When we get to the policy part and when they get a draft reviewed, there's a statutory requirement to have an open house, a public open house. So that is still to be held.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully we'll have lots of engagement. That'd be wonderful. Any questions on that update? Seeing none. Unfinished business. So consent application B3 2022 Descon Construction. And the motion will read that the Planning Advisory Committee recommends to council that the request of the applicant consent application B3 2022 Descon Construction be deferred. So I'll need a mover and seconder if we wanted to table that. Moved by Cam, seconded by Neri. Any questions or comments on that?
Do you want me to? I can speak to
Sure,
it.
of course.
So the deferral was at the request of the applicant for this consent application. It was received, I want to say February of last year. It's the seniors housing project that is, one unit's being built right now. So right now they're trying to figure out the logistics of getting a consent to develop both units. So that's why they've asked for a deferral again to work that out, and then they'll bring back to us. Either they'll move forward with their current application, or if they have a new plan drummed up, then it'll be likely they'll be required to submit a new application with us. But they still have intentions of moving forward with it. They just haven't figured it all out yet for the second unit.
Yeah, great. Any other questions, comments? Okay, and I think we've made it to the adjournment. So I'll get a mover and a seconder. Moved by Cam, seconded by Gina. Did I see your hand up, Gina? That the Planning Advisory Committee be adjourned at 6:30 PM. All in favor?
Oh.
That's carried. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.